The image of a judge presiding over a courtroom symbolizes the pinnacle of legal authority and fairness. However, there are dark moments in history where this symbol of justice is violently torn down.
Tonight, a longtime federal judge from Long Island is dead after a hit-and-run crash in Boca Raton.
This is such a horrific crime. This is a targeted attack on a public official and a judge.
Today, we unravel the grim story of the convicts who dared to defy the law in the most horrific way possible, by killing a judge in the very courtroom where they stood trial. This is a tale of raw brutality, audacity, and the ultimate betrayal of justice, one that will leave you questioning the fragility of the system designed to protect us all. Nastasia Andreini Snape. In a shocking turn of events, the name Nastasia Andreini Snape became synonymous with tragedy and disbelief when a real-life narrative unfolded in April 2021. This story centered around the untimely death of Judge Sandra Feuerstein and the serious injury of 6-year-old Anthony Ovchinnikov, both victims of a hit-and-run incident in Boca Raton, Florida. The unlikely connection between this heartbreaking event and the fictional world of Harry Potter added an eerie element to an already perplexing tale. Prior to that fateful day, Nastasia Andreini Snape was a relatively unknown individual, living her life quietly and inconspicuously. Little did she know that her actions on that Friday would thrust her into the national spotlight for all the wrong reasons. The events that unfolded revealed a series of choices that would forever alter the lives of those involved. As the day began, Snape found herself behind the wheel, navigating the streets of Boca Raton. Witnesses later recalled her driving as anything but ordinary. She navigated through traffic, seemingly unfettered by the rules of the road. Her vehicle darted through the streets erratically, as if the laws of navigation were mere suggestions rather than essential guidelines. It was clear to onlookers that something was wrong. And then it happened. Snape's car veered off the road and onto the sidewalk, where unsuspecting pedestrians were going about their day. Among them was Judge Sandra Feuerstein, a 75-year-old federal judge from New York. The sudden impact was so intense that Judge Feuerstein could not survive her injuries. But Snape's reckless journey did not end there. Showing no signs of stopping or remorse, she continued her spree of devastation. Back on the roadway, she struck young Anthony as he innocently walked across a crosswalk. The force of the impact left the child in critical condition, fighting for his life. The beloved judge became lifeless, and the young boy's future was put in danger due to the unfortunate incident. Despite the havoc she had caused, Snape did not face the reality of the situation. Instead, she chose to flee the scene, leaving behind a path of destruction. Her escape took her to the neighboring town of Delray Beach, where her car eventually crashed, bringing her reckless journey to an end. When the Delray Beach police officers arrived at the scene of the second crash, they were met with a sight that defied explanation. Snape, who had crashed her vehicle yet again, was found unconscious. As she regained consciousness, an unsettling transformation took place. She began acting strangely, seemingly disconnected from reality, and staring into space. It was as if she had retreated into her own world, detached from the severity of her actions. Inside the ambulance, Snape's behavior took an even more bizarre turn. She fought vehemently with the medical personnel, making outlandish claims that she was none other than Harry Potter himself. This bewildering behavior puzzled the investigators. They observed her convulsing, yet when she stepped out of the vehicle, her demeanor shifted to an eerie calmness. Her blank stare and lack of response to their attempts at communication only added to the peculiarity of the situation. As Snape was moved to the hospital, her behavior continued to escalate. She engaged in physical altercations with the medics, screaming and persistently asserting her fictional identity as Harry Potter. In an attempt to regain control, the medics had to sedate her. It was during the subsequent investigation that law enforcement officers made a disturbing discovery. Containers labeled Delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol cannabis and bath salts, substances known to induce erratic behavior, were found in Snape's possession. Subsequently, Snape faced severe legal consequences after she was charged with vehicular homicide for the untimely death of Judge Feuerstein. In Florida, vehicular homicide is a second-degree felony that carries significant penalties. If convicted, Snape could be sentenced to up to 15 years in prison, along with 50 years of probation and a hefty $10,000 fine. The charge of leaving the scene of an accident involving death could add another 30 years to her sentence, while leaving the scene involving injury could result in a maximum of 5 years. Collectively, Snape was confronted with the grim possibility of spending decades of her life behind bars. The legal proceedings that lay ahead would not only determine Snape's fate, but also serve as a reminder of the devastating consequences of reckless actions. The tragic loss of a respected judge, and the significant injury inflicted upon an innocent child, demanded accountability and justice. Brian Gene Nichols. On March 11, 2005, the calm facade of the Fulton County Courthouse shattered as a scene of unimaginable horror unfolded. Brian Gene Nichols, a man desperate to avoid his day in court, became the orchestrator of a violent escape that would send shockwaves through the city of Atlanta and captivate the attention of an entire nation. Nichols' journey to that moment began with a trial for the heinous crimes of rape, kidnapping, and assault committed against a former girlfriend. His first trial had ended in a mistrial and a hung jury, leaving the door open for a second trial. However, little did anyone know that behind the scenes, Nichols and his cohorts were hatching a plan for a daring escape. Whispers of his intentions reached the ears of family and friends, but nobody could fathom the extent of the violence and chaos that was about to be unleashed. As the morning of March 11th dawned, Nichols appeared in court, seemingly like any other defendant. But beneath his exterior, the wheels of his escape plan were already turning. In a terrifying display of brutality, he seized the opportunity to overpower Sheriff Deputy Cynthia Hall while she was in the process of changing clothes. In an instant, he forcibly took possession of her .40 caliber Glock service pistol, leaving her defenseless against his savage attack. Hall was left battered and unconscious, trapped in a coma that would last for months. Now armed and dressed inconspicuously in civilian attire, Nichols embarked on a path of destruction and terror. With ruthless efficiency, he began his deadly rampage through the corridors of the courthouse. Law enforcement and civilians alike became targets of his unbridled rage as he sought to evade capture at any cost. Chaos erupted, panic spread, and the city of Atlanta found itself in the grip of a manhunt unlike any it had ever experienced. Brian Nichols, who had been brought to court for a retrial on rape charges, overpowered a deputy sheriff within the courthouse, leaving her beaten and unconscious. He then stole her service weapon, leaving her defenseless against the brutality to come. Dressed in civilian clothing and armed, Nichols embarked on an unrelenting path of destruction. He quickly made his way to a nearby courtroom, where he took several individuals hostage, including 2 court case managers and a defense attorney. He held them at gunpoint and demanded to be led to the chambers of Judge Roland Barnes. When a sergeant intervened, Nichols forced him to handcuff his colleagues and activate an alarm, which Nichols desperately tried to silence. Despite the sound of the blaring alarm, Nichols stormed into the courtroom where Judge Barnes's trial was taking place. With no mercy or compassion, he fired his weapon, killing Judge Barnes and court reporter Julianne Brandow in cold blood. Chaos erupted within the courthouse as law enforcement scrambled to apprehend Nichols and prevent any further devastation. Nichols fled the scene of his heinous crimes, still armed and determined to evade capture. As he made his way through the courthouse, he encountered Sergeant Hoyt Teasley. In a cold-blooded act of violence, Nichols took the life of Sergeant Teasley, adding another name to the list of those who had fallen victim to his murderous rage. The tumultuous events inside the courthouse were only the beginning of Nichols' violent spree. As soon as he left the courthouse, chaos followed in his wake. Shockingly, another deputy fell victim to his violence. What ensued was a day defined by fear and flight as Nichols eluded capture, leading to an evening of sheer dread. In the exclusive neighborhood of Buckhead, he shot a federal agent, seizing the agent's gun and hijacking his pickup truck. Nichols' escape was not just daring. It was a brutal parade of violence that swept through Atlanta. His audacious flight saw him commandeer multiple vehicles, painting the city red with fear. Atlanta became a battleground, the grim hunt for Nichols dominating national TV screens, notably on the infamous America's Most Wanted. The authorities announced a reward of $65,000 for any information leading to his capture, but Nichols remained uncatchable. The city of Atlanta was shrouded in tension, its streets swarming with law enforcement amidst the relentless manhunt for Brian Nichols. Hour by hour, the harrowing search unfurled as Nichols seemed to slip through the authorities' grasp, leaving the public breathless and horrified as he seemingly melted away into the ether. As the sun rose on the second day, fate wove an unexpected narrative in the small town of Duluth, Georgia. Ashley Smith, a resilient young woman, found herself in a heart-stopping confrontation with the notorious wanted man, Nichols. Gripped by fear and facing the menacing barrel of his gun, Ashley's world was about to collide with the unthinkable. Little did she know, her unwavering resolve and compassion would turn this harrowing ordeal into a story of hope, resilience, and unlikely redemption. Nichols had forced his way into Ashley's apartment, his menacing presence casting a shadow over her life. Confronted with the unimaginable, Ashley channeled an extraordinary display of courage and composure, becoming an unexpected beacon of grace in the face of darkness. Over 7 gripping hours, she engaged Nichols in a dialogue that transcended fear, sharing personal stories that peeled back the layers of their humanity. Despite the barrel of the gun, she bared her soul, recounting the tragic loss of her husband, drawing from the depths of her own pain to offer a glimmer of understanding to her captor. In a twist of surreal compassion, Ashley read poignant excerpts from The Purpose-Driven Life to Nichols, intertwining the power of faith and hope in their bleak reality. Unbelievably, she offered him methamphetamine, a jarring act of empathy that defied conventional wisdom. Yet, with each word and deed, Ashley sowed the seeds of surrender in Nichols' troubled mind, challenging the darkness that clouded his judgment and offering a glimpse of humanity in the midst of chaos. With the dawn breaking on the horizon, a ray of empathy pierced through Nichols' hardened exterior, unraveling the threads of his turmoil. Sharing a meal of pancakes, an unlikely communion emerged between captor and captive. Moved by Ashley's kindness or perhaps the undeniable realization of his grim fate, Nichols allowed her to leave to visit her daughter. In that fleeting moment of freedom, Ashley seized the opportunity, courageously placing a 911 call that would herald the end of their captivity and pave the way for the apprehension of Nichols by the authorities. In the aftermath, Nichols, brought to his senses by the clarity of dawn, confessed the role of drugs and alcohol in the fateful decisions that had led him down a path of darkness and despair. According to him, he thought he was delusional. Drugs and alcohol played a part in those decisions. He acknowledged his words reverberating with the weight of remorse and reckoning. Nichols' capture, a testament to the unyielding bravery of Ashley Smith, brought a much-needed solace to a city paralyzed by fear. As the wheels of justice turned, Nichols was sentenced to multiple life terms without parole on December 13, 2003, a ruling that marked the end of his reign of terror and the beginning of a journey toward closure for a shaken community. Joshua Smith. On April 2017, the nation was stunned by a devastating and heinous crime that shook the foundations of justice in Cook County, Chicago. Judge Raymond Miles, a highly respected figure in the legal community, was tragically shot and killed outside his home in the Roseland community. As the investigation unfolded, the spotlight turned to Joshua Smith, a man with a history of run-ins with the law, who was intricately linked to this shocking crime. Joshua Smith's journey into a life of crime started in the early 2000s, marking the beginning of a fateful connection with Judge Raymond Miles. Initially encountering the judge in a minor case related to vehicle documentation, Smith's path would intertwine with that of the esteemed judge. However, this seemingly inconsequential encounter was just the tip of the iceberg. Smith's brushes with the law would soon escalate into more serious offenses, culminating in a conviction for armed robbery with a firearm at the River Oaks Mall, leading to a 6-year sentence. After his release, Smith briefly took a step towards redemption. He ventured into the car audio and alarm business and embraced the role of a father to 2 teenagers, showing a glimpse of a man determined to change his ways. However, his past continued to cast a shadow over his newfound path. Before long, Smith found himself entangled in darkness once more, leading to a tragic and violent turn of events. On that fateful day of April 10, 2017, Smith and a companion plotted to rob Judge Miles's girlfriend, who was 52 years old, right outside the judge's residence. While the girlfriend survived the robbery attempt, the situation took a deadly turn when Judge Miles stepped out to confront the assailant, resulting in his fatal shooting. The chilling sequence of events that led to the murder of the respected Judge Raymond Miles commenced with a meticulously orchestrated plan. Investigators uncovered a sinister plot that began with a calculated surveillance operation targeting the judge's girlfriend. The perpetrators, including Smith, meticulously observed her routines for weeks, strategizing the perfect moment for a robbery. They noted her early morning departures from the house, setting the stage for the tragic and fatal encounter that unfolded. The 66-year-old judge and his female companion were headed to the gym, unsuspecting of the tragic end that awaited them. A man with a gun soon approached them, exchanging words with the woman in their driveway. The suspect then opened fire, wounding the woman and shooting Judge Miles 4 times. The seasoned judge had rushed to the aid of his companion, and in doing so, lost his life in a senseless act of violence. Although Joshua Smith did not pull the trigger, his role in the crime as the driver of the getaway car placed him at the scene. The vivid details of the incident paint a picture of chaos and violence. The judge's girlfriend, caught off guard and defenseless, faced the terrifying prospect of being confronted by an armed assailant. Amid the chaos, Judge Miles rushed to save her, leading to his tragic and untimely death. Smith's voluntary appearance at the police station would prove fateful, leading to his arrest and subsequent charges for first-degree murder, aggravated battery, and obstruction of justice. Investigators initially speculated that the crime could have been a robbery gone wrong, but nothing was confirmed. Smith's arrest offered some sense of justice for the heinous crime, but it could never atone for the sense of loss and pain felt by loved ones in the community. Although nothing was said of his eventual sentencing, Smith was reported to have been held without bail. Now it's time for today's subscriber pick. Adding to the narrative on evil convicts who killed the judge in the courtroom, there is the story of federal judge John Wood, who was killed by contract killer Charles Harrelson in May 1979. The assassin was hired by drug lord Jamiel Chagra, also known as Jimmy, for $250,000 to assassinate Wood, who was scheduled to preside over the drug lord's trial. This event marked the first time a federal judge had been assassinated in the United States. During that period, Judge Wood, known as Maximum John for his tough stance on drug traffickers, was believed to be untouchable. The crime shocked the city of San Antonio and defied conventions, shaking the justice system's foundations. The Federal Bureau of Investigation launched an extensive investigation, spending over $11 million to find Wood's killer. Eventually, Charles Harrelson, the contract killer, was convicted and sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms plus 5 years. The federal building on Cesar Chavez Boulevard now bears Wood's name as a tribute to his bravery. So guys, what do you make of this story? Do share your thoughts in the comments section below. Aaron Marcus Richardson. The name Aaron Marcus Richardson may not ring a bell to most people, but his story is one that is both harrowing and disturbing. In 2016, Richardson attempted to murder United States District Judge Timothy Corrigan. His actions nearly transformed a courtroom into a crime scene, a scene that could have ended in tragedy. This incident cast a spotlight on the fragility of justice and the depths of human depravity. But this wasn't the first time Richardson had been involved in criminal behavior. Long before he became infamous, Richardson was already showing signs of trouble. In 2008, he was responsible for a firebombing in the streets of Orange Park, Florida. This act of violence earned him a conviction, and it was just the start of a long and troubled journey. It wasn't until Judge Corgan stepped into the picture that Richardson's story really took a dark turn. The judge showed mercy and sentenced Richardson to 3 years of time served and 3 years of supervised release, giving him a chance to turn his life around. But Richardson squandered this second chance by getting into more trouble with the law. It's hard to understand what drives a person to such extremes. Richardson had opportunities to choose a different path, but he continued to make bad choices. Richardson, desperate to escape the shackles of his supervised release, penned a heartfelt plea to Judge Corrigan, begging for an early termination of his probation. In his letter, he claimed that the restrictions of his supervised release were hindering his education at Bethune-Cookman College. Unfortunately for Richardson, the judge, bound by the laws and regulations, could not grant his request. In a cruel twist of fate, Richardson found himself in trouble with the law once again in 2013. This time, he faced charges after allegedly stealing computers from the very college he had pleaded with Judge Corgan to support his education at. Fearing a lengthy prison sentence, Richardson's desperation began to consume him, leading him down a dark path that culminated in a sinister plan to target the judge who stood between him and his freedom. Richardson's meticulous planning started with surveillance. He surreptitiously searched for Judge Corrigan's home address on his phone, determined to infiltrate the judge's personal life. To establish an alibi, he purchased a movie ticket, cunningly crafting an apparent timeline that would divert suspicion away from him. But his sinister intentions didn't stop there. Richardson went to great lengths to acquire a high-powered rifle, ensuring that it couldn't be traced back to him. This was a calculated move to ensure the success of his vendetta. On that fateful night of June 23, 2013, as Judge Corgan and his wife returned home from a joyous wedding celebration, they could not fathom the danger that awaited them. Unbeknownst to them, Richardson lurked within the shadows, crouched in the bushes outside their home, waiting for the opportune moment to strike. The tranquility of the night was abruptly shattered by a loud crack as a rifle shot pierced through the air. The bullet, fired by Richardson's malevolent hand, narrowly missed its intended target by mere inches. The swift and extensive police investigation that followed uncovered damning evidence against Aaron Marcus Richardson. The discovery of a rifle and the extent of his preparations pointed to his involvement in the crime. Richardson's alibi of a movie ticket quickly disintegrated under scrutiny, further strengthening the case against him. Moreover, a stolen gun found at the crime scene linked him directly to the incident. However, it was not just physical evidence that incriminated Richardson. The shocking revelation of forged court documents, bearing Judge Corrigan's transcribed signature, showcased Richardson's audacity and manipulation. These falsified documents, declaring all charges against Richardson dismissed, highlighted the extent to which he went to evade accountability and secure his freedom. Within 2 days of the shooting, authorities closed in on Richardson at his mother's house, initially arresting him for violating his release conditions. As evidence mounted, it became evident that Richardson wasn't merely a suspect in reckless endangerment, but the mastermind behind a premeditated attempt on the judge's life. Prosecutors believed his lack of experience with the rifle he used might have thwarted his lethal intentions. Richardson's arrest marked a pivotal moment in the case, initiating a legal battle that would expose the depths of his criminal intent and motives. Subsequently, he faced the full force of the law he sought to evade. A judge handed down a sentence of 343 years behind bars for his attempted assassination of Judge Timothy Corrigan in 2013. This severe penalty, imposed by the United States District Judge Timothy Corrigan, ensured that Richardson would spend the rest of his life incarcerated, far from the society he endangered. Jared Lee Loughner. The day, January 8, 2011, will forever be remembered as a date of tragedy when Jared Lee Loughner unleashed a deluge of bullets in a Safeway parking lot. The tragedy claimed 6 lives and left 13 wounded, including United States Representative Gabrielle Giffords. Amongst the fatalities was Chief United States District Court Judge John Roll, a champion of justice who tragically fell victim to Loughner's madness. Loughner's early years were unremarkable, and he was considered an average teenager. However, as he grew older, his behavior became increasingly erratic, exhibiting signs of mental illness and growing extremism. People who knew him best noticed a marked difference in his demeanor and the disturbing content of his rants. Despite several red flags, Loughner passed a mental health evaluation, which deemed him fit to live in society. The report stated that he was not a threat to himself or others, and this allowed him to purchase a Glock 19 semi-automatic pistol, the weapon used in the Safeway shooting. However, as his behavior grew more concerning, it became clear that Loughner was a ticking time bomb. Loughner was also struggling with substance abuse problems, which likely compounded his erratic behavior. His drug consumption included marijuana, cocaine, psychedelic mushrooms, lysergic acid diethylamide, and salvia divinorum, as evidenced by bizarre rants caught on video. The disturbing contents of these videos revealed a mind out of control and on the brink of madness. Loeffner's rampage shocked the nation and cast a somber light on the issue of mental health and gun control. It was a tragic reminder of the need for proper mental health checks and strict gun control measures to prevent unbalanced individuals from acquiring deadly weapons. He became increasingly angry, erratic, and paranoid, consumed with a growing contempt for the government and anyone who represented it. His focus eventually settled on United States Representative Gabrielle Giffords, a symbol of the government he despised. Loeffner had met Giffords in 2007 during an event, and the encounter left a lasting impression on him. He saw her as a representation of the government that was brainwashing its citizens. In the weeks leading up to the shooting, Loeffner's online behavior offered a glimpse into his disturbed mind. He posted about mind control, the new currency, and the illegitimacy of the government. His social media activity hinted at the violence he was planning. His digital footprint was almost like a breadcrumb trail, leading authorities to the evidence they needed to piece together his growing obsession with violence. On the day of the shooting, Loeffner's plan was meticulous. He purchased ammunition and checked into a motel, and his actions were those of a person on a mission. When he arrived at the Safeway parking lot where Representative Giffords was holding her Congress on Your Corner event, Loeffner was armed with a Glock 19 semi-automatic pistol. This weapon was one of several he had legally purchased just 2 months before the shooting. Unknown to the crowd gathered for the event, they were about to witness a national tragedy. In a matter of 15 seconds, Jared Loeffner emptied a 33-round magazine, leaving devastation in his wake. The aftermath of this act of violence was heart-wrenching, with 6 lives lost, including Chief United States District Court Judge John Roll and 9-year-old Christina Taylor Greene. 13 others were injured, and Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords suffered a critical gunshot wound to the head. As chaos ensued, bystanders bravely subdued Loeffner, leading to his immediate arrest by law enforcement at the scene. As the case unfolded, the issue of Loeffner's mental health came into focus. The court ordered forcible medication in an attempt to restore his competency. In a surprising turn of events, Loeffner agreed to a plea deal, pleading guilty to 19 charges of murder and attempted murder. This decision effectively took the death penalty off the table. The sentencing hearing that followed was a somber affair, reflecting the gravity of the crimes committed. Finally, the judge delivered the sentence. Loeffner was ordered to serve 7 consecutive life sentences, denying any possibility of parole, along with an additional 140 years in federal prison. This ruling meant that he would spend the remainder of his days behind bars, bringing a semblance of justice to the victims and their families. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.